Lyanna Stark is one of the many characters that died before the current timeline of A Song of Ice and Fire, yet continues to haunt the narrative. She also comes across as the more colorful one, with a clearly defined personality, which can be said about many others, of whom we know very little. Yet the perception of Lyanna in the fandom is strange to say the least. There she is forced into one of the two very arbitrary categories, denying her clearly established characterization and leading to worrying implications. Before we start, remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video. Lyanna Stark was the only daughter of Lord Rhaegar Stark and Lady Lyanna Stark. She had two older brothers, Brandon and Eddard, and one younger one, Benjen. According to Ned, Lyanna resembled his daughter Arya, both in appearance and character. Like Arya, Lyanna had what he called wolf blood, a hot-headed temperament. Many other people described Lyanna as boyish and wild as well. There are hints in the story that Lyanna was also interested in becoming a knight. Now two children dance across the Godswood, hooting at one another as they duelled with broken branches. The girl was the older and taller of the two. Arya, Bran thought eagerly, as he watched her leap up onto a rock and cut at the boy. But that couldn't be right. If the girl was Arya, the boy was Bran himself, and he had never worn his hair so long. And Arya never bet me at playing swords, the way that girl is beating him. She slashed the boy across his thigh, so hard that his leg went out from under him, and he fell into the pool and began to splash and shout. "You be quiet, stupid," the girl said, tossing her own branch aside. "It's just water. Do you want old Nan to hear and run tell father?" She knelt and pulled her brother from the pool, but before she got him out again, the two of them were gone. Ned was fostered in the Vale by Jon Arryn alongside Robert Baratheon, and Lyanna was betrothed to the latter. This was unusual, considering that the great houses such as Stark would usually either marry cousins, like Lyanna's own parents, or their bannermen. Some speculate that this had to do with certain Southron ambitions, but they are not the subject of this video. Whatever the case, even though young Robert was handsome and charming, Lyanna was not happy with the match. Robert will never keep to one bed, Lyanna had told him at Winterfell, on the night long ago when their father had promised her hand to the young lord of Storm's End. "I hear he has gotten a child on some girl in the Vale." Ned had held the babe in his arms. He could scarcely deny her, nor would he lie to his sister, but he had assured her that what Robert did before their betrothal was of no matter, that he was a good man and true, who would love her with all his heart. Lyanna had only smiled. "Love is sweet, dearest Ned, but it cannot change a man's nature." Lyanna was later vindicated in this belief. In 281 AC, Lyanna and her family attended the Great Tourney in Harrenhal, which some speculate was a cover-up for Rhaegar's plan to start a conspiracy against his own father. In A Storm of Swords, Mira Reed recounts an interesting story that happened during this event. The little Crannog man was walking across the field, enjoying the warm spring day and harming none, when he was set upon by 3 squires. They were none older than 15, yet even so they were bigger than him, all 3. This was their word, as they saw it, and he had no right to be there. They snatched away his spear and knocked him to the ground, cursing him for a frog-eater. They shoved him down every time he tried to rise, and kicked him when he curled up on the ground. But then they heard a roar. "That's my father's man you're kicking," howled the she-wolf. "A wolf on 4 legs or 2? 2, said Mira. The she-wolf laid into the squires with a tourney sword, scattering them all. The Crannog man was braced and bloodied, so she took him back to her lair to clean his cuts and bind them up with linen. There he met her pack brothers, the wild wolf who led them, the quiet wolf beside him, and the pup who was youngest of the 4. That evening there was to be a feast in Harrenhal, to mark the opening of the tourney, and the she-wolf insisted that the lad attend. He was of high birth, with as much a right to a place on the bench as any other man. She was not easy to refuse, this wolf maid, so he let the young pup find him garb suitable to a king's feast, and went up to the great castle. Under Harren's roof he ate and drank with the wolves, and many of their stone swords, besides, barrowed down men and moose and bears and mermen. The dragon prince sang a song so sad it made the wolf maid sniffle, but when her pup brother teased her for crying, she poured wine over his head. A black brother spoke, asking the knights to join the night's watch. The Storm Lord drank down the Knight of Skulls and Kisses in a wine-cup war. The Cranogman saw a knight with laughing purple eyes dance with a white sword, a red snake, and the Lord of Griffins, and lastly with the Quiet Wolf. But only after the Wild Wolf spoke to her on behalf of a brother, too shy to leave his bench. Amidst all the merriment, the little Cranogman spied the 3 squires who had attacked him. One served a pitchfork knight, one a porcupine, while the last attended a knight with 2 towers on his surcoat. A sigil all Cranogmen know well. The wolf maid saw them too, and pointed them out to her brothers. "I could find you a horse, and some armor that might fit," the pup offered. The little Cranogman thanked him, but gave no answer. His heart was torn. Cranogmen are smaller than most, but just as proud. The lad was no knight, no more than any of his people. We sit a boat more often than a horse, and our hands are made for oars, not lances. Much as he wished to have his vengeance, he feared he would only make a fool of himself and shame his people. The Quiet Wolf had offered the little Cranogman a place in his tent that night, but before he slept he knelt on the lake shore, looking across the water to where the Isle of Faces would be, and said a prayer to the old gods of North and Neck. "You never heard this tale from your father?" asked Jojen. It was old Nan who told these stories. As it happened, the end of the first day saw the Porcupine Knight win a place among the champions, and on the morning of the second day, the Pitchfork Knight and the Knight of the 2 Towers were victorious as well. But late on the afternoon of that second day, as the shadows grew long, a mystery knight appeared in the lists. It was the little Cranogman, I bet. No one knew, said Mira. But the mystery knight was short of stature, and clad in ill-fitting armor made up of bits and pieces. The device upon his shield was a heart tree of the old gods, a white weirwood with a laughing red face. The mystery knight dipped his lance before the king and rode to the end of the lists, where the 5 champions had their pavilions. "You know the 3, he challenged. The Porcupine Knight, the Pitchfork Knight, and the Knight of the Twin Towers. Bran had heard enough stories to know that. He was the little Cranogman, I told you. Whoever he was, the old gods gave strength to his arm. The Porcupine Knight fell first, then the Pitchfork Knight, and lastly the Knight of the 2 Towers. None were well loved, so the common folk cheered lustily for the Knight of the Laughing Tree, as the new champion soon was called. When his fallen foes sought to ransom horse and armor, the Knight of the Laughing Tree spoke in a booming voice through his helm, saying, "Teach your squire honor. That shall be ransom enough." Once the defeated knights chastised their squires sharply, their horses and armor were returned. And so the little Cranogman's prayer was answered. By the green men, or the old gods, or the children of the forest, who can say? The Knight of the Laughing Tree had vanished. The knight was wroth, and even sent his son the Dragon Prince to seek the man, but all they ever found was his painted shield, hanging abandoned in a tree. It was the Dragon Prince who won that tourney in the end. Oh! Bran thought about the tale a while. That was a good story. But it should have been the 3 bad knights who hurt him, not their squires. Then the little Cranogman could have killed them all. The part about the ransoms was stupid, and the mystery knight should win the tourney, defeating every challenger, and name the wolf maid the Queen of Love and Beauty. She was, said Mira. But that's a sadder story. This story is used without telling any names, but it's not difficult to decipher who was who. The Cranogman is Howland Reed, father of Mira and Jojen. The she-wolf is Lyanna. The Quiet Wolf is Ned. The Wild Wolf is Brandon. The pup is Benjen. The Dragon Prince is Rhaegar, and the Knight of the Laughing Tree is none other than Lyanna herself. Considering that many people comment on her exceptional horse-riding ability, which is important in jousting, as well as her secretly practicing swordplay, it would not be that difficult to defend Howland's honor. While the identity of the Knight of the Laughing Tree was never explicitly confirmed, though to me it's obvious and certain that it was Lyanna, one thing was confirmed. That Rhaegar Targaryen was the winner of the tourney, which gave him the right to name the Queen of Love and Beauty. Rather than to name his wife Elia Martell, he picked Lyanna, placing a flower crown made out of blue winter roses on her lap, ones that Lyanna was especially fond of, and causing a scandal, since she was betrothed and he was married. It was then when all these smiles died. 1 year later, Lyanna and Rhaegar met again and he seemingly kidnapped her, launching a chain of events that led to Robert's rebellion and ultimately overthrowing the Targaryen dynasty. Robert killed Rhaegar on the Trident and Ned rode to Dorne, where Lyanna was kept in the place Rhaegar called the Tower of Joy, bringing 6 loyal companions with him, including Holland, whose honor Lyanna defended. In the Tower of Joy, they fought with 3 Kingsguard knights, and only Ned and Howland survived this encounter. They found Lyanna in the bed of blood, and before she died, she asked Ned to promise her something. The exact cause of her death and what was the subject of that promise have not yet been revealed, but a widely accepted theory says that Lyanna died in childbirth, and that she asked Ned to protect her son from Robert's wrath. Like most characters deceased before the events of this story, Lyanna is shrouded in mystery and grief. We do know how she was in terms of appearance and personality, since we have a character that resembles her greatly in the story proper, and is frequently compared to her. There are, however, a few question marks around her character that have not yet been explicitly confirmed. Some of those are indeed mysteries, others are already revealed in the subtext, such as the fact that Lyanna was denied of the Laughing Tree. But the nature of the fandom causes people to only accept something as canon if it's stated outright. Suffice to say, we will definitely get confirmations about a lot of those question marks in the upcoming book anyway. In any case, we only know Lyanna through the words and memories of other characters, and they sometimes contradict each other. Robert Baratheon staunchly believed that Lyanna was kidnapped and raped by Rhaegar, but curiously Ned, for whom Lyanna was a beloved little sister, neither confirms nor denies this, and does not seem to have strong feelings towards a man who supposedly hurt his little sister so much. Rhaegar's siblings, Viserys and Daenerys, seem to believe that Rhaegar loved Lyanna, and given that one of them was only 8 and one was not yet born, their guardians, Rhaella and later Sir Willem Darry, must have believed this too. Barristan Selmy, a member of the Kingsguard and Rhaegar's close companion, also believes this. More neutral people, like Kevan, seem to at least imply that Rhaegar was acting out of love, since he makes a comment that if Aerys agreed to a match between Rhaegar and Cersei, he would never have looked at Lyanna. Fandom perception of Rhaegar either confirms Robert's beliefs or assumes that even if Rhaegar did not kidnap and rape Lyanna, he still only did what he did to get a 3rd child out of her and fulfill some prophecy, ignoring that he has been described as love-strung prince by the author, that he died with her name on his lips, and that in spite of being melancholic and never truly happy, he named the place where they resided for at least some time, Tower of Joy. A lot has been said about Rhaegar and his motivations, while Lyanna's perspective is rarely taken into account. And when it is, rather than see Lyanna as a fully fleshed out person who made certain choices, she is instead reduced to 2 of the most common feminine archetypes in history, a Madonna or a whore. The Madonna-Whore complex is a construct of male psychology as old as time that constrains female sexuality by categorizing a woman as either pure and good or promiscuous and bad. There is no middle ground, a woman can only be one or the other, and it's very easy to fall from the good graces, stop being a Madonna and turn into whore. While this belief is mostly shared by men, some women have internalized it as well. There is no shortage of Madonna-Whores in the fandom, especially among the Madonnas in the so-called Dead Ladies Club. But Lyanna, while technically a member of that club, isn't particularly easy to put into the Madonna category. We have her literal reincarnation in this story, and she is far from the ladies who beautifully suffered for their duties, like Rhaella. In order to force Lyanna into the same archetype, her entire personality, motivations, and decisions are essentially rendered null and void. The small pieces of information we get about her are that she was not happy about being betrothed to Robert, and that she was kidnapped by Rhaegar. Due to this, some supporters of the Lyanna Madonna framework accept Robert's version of events at face value, that the ever so willful and wild girl suddenly turned into a helpless little baby and was kidnapped and raped, making her into a yet another suffering female martyr in an endless string of suffering female martyrs, such as Rhaella and Naerys. There is, however, a more sympathetic and less out-of-character portrayal of the events. That even if Lyanna was unhappy about the prospect of marriage to Robert, fell in love with Rhaegar and ran away with him, willingly and on her own volition, perhaps even asked for Rhaegar's help to escape, she must have come to regret it, because he tricked her into using her body for a prophecy baby. There are, however, those who accept the premise that Lyanna loved Rhaegar and willingly chose to run away with him, but despise Lyanna for this. There is no shortage of those who call her a teenage girl, a homewrecker and a selfish slut who should have ignored what her heart wants and marry Robert with no complaining, becoming a good, proper, dutiful martyr who endures his inevitable cheating, abuse and rape, like a good woman should. So, Lyanna-Whore. Both of those readings enforced the very same idea, that even if it was Lyanna's conscious choice, she ended up punished for it, be it benevolently by realizing that her Prince Charming is a monster who only used her womb, or straight up her getting what she deserved for daring to not conform to the expectations placed on her based on her gender. That is, marrying Robert with no complaining, becoming a good, proper, dutiful martyr who endures his inevitable abuse and rape, like a good woman should. Even those who seem to recognize potential power imbalances of the age gap between her and Rhaegar and the prospect of her potentially being manipulated, do not shy away from calling her a whore anyway. Much is said about how selfish and cruel were Rhaegar and Lyanna for running away, leaving respectively his wife and her betrothed, and engulfing the continent in a pointless war. Few ever note that not only was it impossible for them to predict how wide-spanning implications their actions would be, especially Lyanna, given how young and naive she must have been, but also how this war never would have happened if it wasn't for the expectations placed on both of them. Frankly, this wasn't even the first situation where the Targaryens and Baratheons feuded over a similar matter. The betrothal between Lyanna and Robert was not decided by her. She knew how Robert was, and she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. She would be ripped away from her home to live in Storm's End, the other side of the continent, away from her family, and definitely enduring Robert's cheating and abuse. She fell in love, as young girls tend to, and made a choice to pursue love, rather than duty, that would bring her nothing but pain. Her fate was ultimately tragic, but choosing happiness with someone she truly loved, even for that short period of time, meant it was not a waste. The problem is that Lyanna is treated exactly the same way by the men in universe as she is in the fandom. You will notice that the reason why Brandon barged into King's Landing was not because his baby sister was being potentially mistreated and raped, but because Rhaegar dishonored her, and by extension, him and his family. He essentially treated her as his property, as is the case in feudal patriarchy, where women were indeed property to be exchanged between families. Whichever version of events we are presented with, both the Lyanna-Whore and Lyanna-Madonna proponents believe so too. That she should have remained her family's property and not act out, and that the punishment was essentially her own doing, for being a home-wrecking slut or for her naivety. Lyanna is neither a home-wrecking whore nor a pure Madonna martyr who was either kidnapped or regretted eloping with Rhaegar. She was just a girl, a regular person who gave in to her desires which were completely normal. To love and be loved and pursue happiness in spite of the harmful expectations placed on her. She chose to do this, stood by this decision, and hers and Rhaegar's story is undeniably romantic, tragic and beautiful. She should not be rendered into a passive object in this story she herself set in motion, nor should she be labelled a disgusting Jezebel because she did not act according to the norms of the society that she lived in. I fully believe that The Winds of Winter will reveal Lyanna to be the one asking Rhaegar to run away with her, and standing by that decision. When that happens, many of those who benevolently cast her as a beautiful martyr who was manipulated will quickly switch to the Lyanna-Whore side. That is a shame because, for the love of God, this fandom should once and for all stop glorifying women who agreed to be bloodmares suffering their entire lives for some arbitrary duty and sacrifice. I will instead continue celebrating women who rebelled against it in whatever limited capacity they had. If the entire continent must burn so that one girl is not forced into marriage, then honestly so be it. Thanks for watching. Remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video.